Hi, I'm Brendan Bushy, and I'm with Frank Maggio and his son Nicholas Maggio. And I wanted to try an experiment, if you will. And I hope this is just the first part. I'd like to revisit this in a year and then maybe in another year and another year, assuming we're all around for it. Um, but I just want to get a take on like a multi-generational perspective on where we're at now. Well, now, Nick, you are 29,
Yes.
and Frank, you're 56.
Sold. Yes.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Frank, what were you doing when you were 29? Do you remember?
29 was 30. So one thing I know I was doing is I got, I was married, probably had 99. I probably had two kids at that time, one of which would be Nick, and the other his sister Megan, in a house, whether that be renting or, bought one. And then obviously working. So outside of that, working, kids, married.
Okay. Do you remember what you were working at?
In 99, right? You're saying?
Yeah, 97.
Um, it would have been one of two things. I was either in the computer field working for family who had a small run computer business, or I would have been on Wall Street in Manhattan on the financial district, doing different things.
And you were a couple of things. You, at that point, 97, you had graduated college?
Yeah, yeah. I would have did Dowling happened in 91 for me at the end. The end.
Okay. And it would be, if you can remember, it would be helpful. Do you remember if you owned that house or rented it?
I'm not sure. So just the math, right? Right. So you're saying 97. Nick was born in 95. So he's only 2 years. I'm going to go with renting. I
Okay.
rented wherever I was. It was renting at that.
Okay. And do you, at some point, two things. At some point, you purchased a house.
Yeah.
Do you remember what year that was?
Um. I think it would have been closer to early 2000s. A short time thereafter.
And, okay. And also, at some point, you went into business for yourself.
Yeah.
When did you do that?
That was certainly within that time frame as well, whereby I would have done weekends or any time off, doing that, starting that at least.
Okay. Um, and that is something you're still doing today, right? That
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
started a business. And
Uh-huh.
what is that?
It's a concrete and masonry contractor.
Okay. So you've had an interesting, you graduated college,
Yeah.
you were working for a computer company,
Hmm.
or and then you were working in the market,
Yeah.
and then you started your own business as a contractor, a
Yeah.
mason.
Hmm.
What got you into masonry?
That would have been my dad, who, when I was younger than whatever, um, he would have brought me around to different jobs, weekends, and whenever he was doing it. So he definitely would have exposed me to that particular trade in the 10-year-old world, meaning I'm
Okay.
10.
So Nick, you're 29,
I am.
you finished school,
Yes.
you're in your second job since graduating.
Law school, that's right.
Okay, so you finished a bachelor's degree, then you went on and got your law degree.
Correct.
And and when you were first working after you got your law degree, you were working as what?
I was working as a prosecutor in the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office,
And what are you working as now?
law clerk for a federal judge.
Okay. And you did what, 3 years as a prosecutor?
Four.
Four. And you're just finishing your first year as a clerk?
I'm coming up on, I just passed 6 months.
Oh, okay. Okay. And are you married?
I am newly married.
Okay. And do you own or rent?
I rent an apartment.
Okay. So it seems at least at the similar ages, right? You both were not in a position to own a house.
I think that that's fair. Yeah.
Okay. Is that fair with you too, Frank?
Yes.
Okay. So Frank, what enabled you to get a house? What changed, if anything?
It's a great question, and it did. And it was a gift.
A gift. Wow.
Yeah, it was a gift.
From
So
who?
what's that?
It's okay if I ask you who gave it to you?
Yeah, yeah, but you know, there's going to be some context following that immediately, right?
Okay.
The fairness of the recording, right?
Okay.
So when I say a gift, what that means is that at the time, my in-laws slash Nick's grandparents would have been in a position where they were looking to move from what they originally purchased as an investment house
Okay.
into their primary residence, which oddly enough was 4 houses down the road from that same exact property.
Okay.
And um, when they did that, they knew where they were going to do that. They certainly knew that we needed a place. It's possible that they didn't want us, meaning my wife at the time and Nick's mom, to rent anymore. We can't afford a house. We can make the mortgage payment. So when I started this off with a gift, what that means is, and just to show a number of the times, the gift would have been about $15,000. And that was a gift of equity that was just enough to get into that house, whereby our credentials at that time were then sufficient enough to fund that. So that's essentially how that went down.
When you did, that's interesting. When you did that, did you get a new mortgage or you just assumed their mortgage?
New mortgage.
New mortgage. Okay. So had it not been, I'll get to this in a second, but had it not been for that gift, which produced equity for you in the tune of 15,000, would you have been able to get a house at the time?
So I just don't want to say it like that. And I'm not saying what you said is wrong. I just don't want to say it that way. And it did reduce. So the gift of equity in that type of what a large number for a young family guy with no accumulated funds, that was the deposit. So with that, that's a big number at the time, whereby you're saying to the bank, hey, look, if you need future payment, you check my credentials. If you need me to have some skin in the game, here's $15,000. And that's how that worked.
Okay. And what did the house cost you at the time? Or what was your first mortgage at? Do you remember?
Yeah, round figures. And I don't think anybody's going to look back and double check me, but I want to say like a mortgage payment for, I hope this is right, $125,000 house would have been $1,200, $1,500 a month in that
Okay. So
ballpark.
your first house was 125,000
Right.
roughly, and
Yeah.
you're paying about 1,200 a month mortgage.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And how big a house was that?
It was a small 3-bedroom ranch on a slab.
Okay. So Nick, I'm just curious. I don't want to ask people their income, so I'm going to avoid this.
Okay.
But Nick, can you afford a house now? Or can you get
No.
a mortgage for a house now?
I guess that's a different question. Um, I might be able to get a mortgage I might qualify for a mortgage for a house. Sure.
Okay. And have you looked at any houses?
Yes.
So in terms of the houses you're looking at, are they similar to what your father's describing? Are they less of a house, more of a house?
No, I think they're comparable to what he's describing. I mean, my wife Alana and I were sharing houses with each other actually just today that we were looking at, and they were ranging anywhere between 3 to 4 bedroom homes at maybe 1,500 to no more than 2,500 square feet.
Okay. And what were they going for?
Anywhere, I think on the low end, they were going for about 500 to 600,000, and on the
Oh,
high end, they were probably going for about three quarters, 800,000.
Wow. Okay. And do you have any idea if let's say on the low end, over 500,000. Do you have any idea what your mortgage payment would be if you were to get a house like that?
Um, I don't have a clear sense because I think a lot of that would obviously depend on how much we put down and then what the interest rate were. But I think estimates would be, I mean, when you're including principal, interest, taxes, and everything, I think it would probably be around 5,000-ish dollars a month.
Okay, so times have certainly changed.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. Let me ask this. We're about to start a new year. Okay. And we're also about in the new year, in a little over a month, we're going to have um, a new administration come into Washington. So I'm not trying to get, I don't want to get political. I just want to get a take. Um, Let me ask you, Frank, what do you see? Well, I don't know how to phrase it. Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? Are you neither? How do you what do you perceive possibly coming about or the next what do you think the next year will bring? Let me ask it that way. That's an easier question.
So that was a lot what you said just there, even if I want to attempt at remembering half of it, right? Phrased it like 3 or 4 different ways. So the
But
one
take
thing,
it from what do you think the next year will be like? Or where do you think you'll be? This is the question.
yeah, I hate that question. I try never to answer that question ever. And I
Good.
hate like with a passion. So where do you see yourself in the next year, 3 years, 5 years? It's something of that nature.
No, not where you see yourself. Where
Uh,
do you see our economy? Let's put it that way.
oh, that's okay. So whatever I remember, if you have to ask it again, then you're in control. So ask it again. I am optimistic about the future. I do think the economy is going to be in an okay, if not better place than what it is now. And I think that answers most of however you phrased your thing, your
Okay.
question.
And if the economy is better, do you think you'll be doing better as well?
Yeah, yeah,
I guess I'm saying that the economy is not going to get better and you're going to be left behind.
no.
Okay. So let me ask you the same question, Nick. Where do you think the economy will be in another year?
Mm, I don't know. I'm not optimistic about it though in another year.
Okay. Um, do you think you'll be better off in another year, or do you think your fate will depend on what's happening with the economy?
Um, it's hard for me to say. Um, I don't think I'll own a home in a year. I don't think I'll be in, I don't think I'll have a mortgage within another year. Um, so that's one thing that pops into my mind. I mean, I I don't have a lot of money tied up in the market, so to the extent that that fluctuate, I don't think I would either be hurt or advantaged by that. Um, but I save a lot, so as long as I'm employed, I think I'll be okay in that regard. So uh, yeah, I think that answers your question. I don't carry a lot of debt that has a lot of interest on it, so I don't think to the extent that interest rates change all that much, I'll be harmed by those. So I think I'll probably be okay no matter which way things go. Um, so yeah.
Frank, when you graduated, did you have student loan debt, anything like that?
No.
Okay, so you didn't have any burden in that regard. Nick, what about you? When you finished finally, did you have any student loan debt?
Not when I finished college, but only when I finished law school did I. So yes, I presently have student loan debt, and that was as a result of going to law school.
And
Yeah, just for transparency and honesty. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this one, but I am. I had stupidity debt, if that means anything. Anybody know what that means? That means when you go to school and companies want to grab you because you're young and dumb, never mind a good credit score and a potential income. I did get locked into that a little bit, which didn't work out too well for me, just for candid and transparency. So again, you're a student, you're 18 to 20 something, and it at that time for me, based on these numbers that were thrown around, I easily got into about $30,000 worth of debt at that time.
But not tuition debt.
Correct.
Okay. So Nick, do you mind if I ask you what your tuition debt is at the point you finished law school?
It was just about 100,000.
Okay. So you both, in terms of graduating school, starting working, you both don't own a house at that time, at roughly the same time. Frank, you come out without a student loan debt. Nick, you're coming out with 100,000 in student loan debt. Frank, you were able to get a house in a few years, and you were fortunate. That's the word I'd use. I don't know if you would agree with that, that someone um, helped you in a sense, the circumstance and your in-laws. Nick, you don't see anything like that. I'm assuming you're saying in a year you don't think you still don't think you'd have a house.
Yeah, I think that that's right.
Frank, do you think I'm playing a game here.
I like games.
Would it be harder? Do you think he's got a harder road ahead to get
Yeah.
his house than you did?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay.
For
And what
sure.
about you, Nick? Do you think you have a harder road than your father did, or you think your father had a harder road than you did?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think, uh, yeah, I guess who am I to disagree? Yeah, I guess I do have a harder road than what he did. Sure, I'll take the uphill battle.
Okay.
So a couple of things, just as it relates. I don't want to say I'm glad my dad's here, but technically I'm glad my dad's here, and I know I'm speaking for him, which is wrong, and I shouldn't. But when you know what I know,
I
sometimes
don't understand your dad's here. He's not here.
I know, and I'm saying a good thing because one of the things that would have came out of his mouth is, "Listen, houses were less then, and you made less then, but it's not the same thing. This is a much different thing."
Okay. I I would prefer not to bring your dad in. He's not here.
Okay.
Um,
So there is the outside chance too that an extreme event can happen. Sometimes they're gift of equities. Sometimes you win lotto. Sometimes the mortgage people decide to have a no income, no check. You just sign your life away. And the next thing, if Nick makes a dumb decision, he's in $1 million house.
okay. Okay. So, um, just for the sake of clarity, Frank, your father is one of my oldest friends. We went to college together. So I met him when I was a freshman in college.
Mhm.
And I know your mom. I remember when your mom was carrying you. Uh, Nick, I met you later on. I didn't know you from, the time you were um, being formed. So I know your family. And I guess that's why I have access to talk to you guys because I do that. So thank you. Um, what I'm trying to do here is I think it would be interesting, and I may be wrong, but this is what I find interesting, to get here's a father and son, right? See what their perspectives are, see how they're evaluating what's happening now, and then maybe in a year from now, roughly the same time, come back and have this conversation again in terms of, you know, did the year play out the way you thought it would? Go
Sure.
ahead. You were going to say something.
Yeah, so I have a yeah, but. So the yeah, but is, yeah, sure. Everything you said, that's all fine and good. And I would be up for that no matter what. The but side of it goes like, without parameters or a barometer to evaluate, then it's like, okay, right? Watch, I'll just fast forward to another year. Frankie, anything changed? Nah, not really. Same with Nick. You're in the house yet? Nope. Okay. So like the gauge, it's important.
Well, I think that in another year, you'd both be able to say how the last year was.
Sure.
And I think if we continue doing this on a year by year basis, it would be interesting to see how things evolve. In other words, you're optimistic, Nick, you're not so optimistic. And a year from now, Are you going to still be optimistic? Are you going to still not be so optimistic? A year from then, where are you going to be? You know what I'm saying? And I don't think there's anything scientific about this or even objective about this. This is just talking to two guys, a father and son, and comparing their coming up, right? Because you both had similar things. You both went to school, you both came out of school, you were both married, you both rented, you know, Frank, you've moved on, you've owned a house, you've started a business. Nick, you haven't started a business, you haven't
No.
owned a house. Um, Frank, what's the most important thing happening for you right now?
So I don't mind answering that, Brent. Could I had one comment on what you had said before that. So for me, and I'm not telling you how to conduct your experiment, I think, for lack of a better word. There's two things going on in terms of me. One, I'm not going to call it cheating, but I'm cheating essentially. And the reason why I'm cheating is that I'm able to go with the flow of whatever there is, right? So what that means is if I'm optimistic, one of the things is that I could either raise prices, lower prices. Nick, not that he's a victim to anyone really ever, but he's somewhat subject to whatever somebody's willing to pay him for his services. That's one thing that really, 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 really needs to be noted. And with regard to your experiment thing, you went from a position of going forward. You could also go backwards on the level of, hey, Brent, and I know I shouldn't be asking the questions, but hey, Brent, what if the concept of actually home ownership with today's youth is less important than what it was in my world or your the elder generation's world, right? Like, get out of school, boom, house, white picket fence. What if my world is like, yeah, well, I want to kind of, but it's difficult. And then what about if his world is like, you know what? Screw it. I really don't care. I'm going to rent. I'm going to take all my other assets and or money and do something else with it. Whether that be I judged it frivolously traveling, or I'm going to go to the market, or maybe even open up another business. That's a shift there in priorities, is what I'm saying.
Okay, so let me ask you this. That was good. You raised another question, and I'll ask it. Let me start with you, Frank. When you were that age, what were your priorities?
Yeah. So no matter what they were, it doesn't matter only because the context was, shelter and family, right? When your choices are limited, you have to, it was just family. I was, again, married, kids, and the renting versus the ownership, it still counted as shelter.
Okay, but did you aspire to own your own home?
Sure, I would have liked to, and if it
Okay.
came along,
And did you want to be married? I mean, you came out of school and a few years later you married. Is that something you wanted to do? Was that something you saw yourself as a married person with a home and a family?
sure. And not that I could go back to dates, but if I got out of school in 91, I think the spread is about 5 years before I got married.
Okay. Okay. And Nick, what was the spread for you? You got out of school?
Yeah, I graduated law school in 2020, and then I just got married this year in 2024, so it was 4 years.
Oh, yeah. So similar spread, but at a later point. You were older at the time you got married, Nick.
Yeah, I got married when I was 29 this year.
Okay. And Frankie, how old were you when you first got married? Maybe I should know that.
No, 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 no. I got married in 93.
So,
93.
okay.
Um, just important to note too, right? For the record, certainly not argumentative, but one of the differences, and these dates, you double check me. I see that you're writing stuff down. Nick's married. I'm married with a kid,
Okay.
or two. It plays a role, right? So, like, I don't know if you're talking ownership and investment, but at 27, I had one kid. Four
Okay.
years, 5 years later was the second kid. So the kids have an impact on. I'm not going to judge today's kid, but they might be less inclined to have kids. They might want to have pets or whatever, or none kids, nothing at all, and whatever.
Okay. So Nick, let me ask you, what upon graduation, what were your aspirations?
To work, to get a job. Um, I wouldn't say I was particularly motivated to get married. It wasn't something that I necessarily sought out. I was okay with it happening if it did, but I wasn't of the mindset that I needed to get married. I think at that point, I was sufficiently persuaded that home ownership was not on the immediate horizon for me, so I didn't aspire to immediately own a home. I was more so concerned with just saving money. At the time, I was living with my grandparents, and I did so for maybe a year after graduating law school. So I was concerned with saving money and making my student loan payments.
Okay. And your father raised an interesting thing. I'm just curious, do you have any thoughts one way or the other about having children, or that's not on, it's not on
Yeah, I
the
mean,
card?
it's definitely something that I'd like to do. I would say but that's a recent aspiration for me. I've only started feeling that way since getting married.
Okay. Frank, let me ask you this. I don't want to interject myself in this, so I'm trying not to. But my questions are telltale. Before you graduated college, did you envision yourself as being something as an adult in terms of having a home, being married, having children? Let me ask it that way.
Yeah, so that's pretty good. That's a good one. And sorry to, again, it's no but. So the no is no. I didn't envision myself as being something with regard to a trade or home ownership. However, somewhat different than Nick. Um, I knew that I wanted to have a kid, you know, that or children, kids, children, singular, plural. So I knew I wanted kids, and and then the rest would fall into place. To be honest with you, it just that's I knew
Okay.
I wanted kids.
Okay. So let me go back to something I asked before, and if you guys have answered it, I've forgotten it. I'm 78, so you have to bear with me. Um, what is, Frank, what's the most important to you thing right now?
I did write it down, and I was going to come back to it. So one of the things that I happen to notice as getting a little older is that um, the most important thing so you focus on death is my answer, and when you focus on death, that means that you're not here. And then if you're not here, it's like, well, how do I take care of the people that I love and want to take care of if I'm not here? What's the mechanisms and the instruments in place to try to make that happen? And that, in the nutshell, is the most important thing to me here and now.
Okay. And Nick, what's the most important thing to you right now?
I'd say my family, and my work. My wife and my dog Rosie. I'd say those are very important to me. And my extended family too. My dad, my grandparents are very important to me too. My sisters, my brother. And I would just say my work as well is important.
Okay. Your father clearly is worried about or aware of his mortality and concerned what happens after. Do you have any thoughts about that?
About his mortality
About
or
your
about
mortality? Is it something you find yourself thinking about?
um yeah, I think so. I can't say I think about it all the time, but I'm definitely aware that I will die. I can't say that it's something that necessarily motivates my behavior. It's not so at the front of my mind that I do things in with that idea in mind, but it's definitely something I'm aware of as I have lost a few members of my family, so there's that. And then the people that took care of me when I was a kid are getting older, and I see that, and I know that that's on the horizon. So and that makes me reflect on my own mortality sometimes. So yeah, I'm aware of it, but I can't say it necessarily consciously influences my behavior.
Okay. It doesn't sound like you're worried about it.
No, no, I'm not. It doesn't worry me.
Okay. And if I got you right, Frank, you are worried about that.
It's number one, you said. Yeah. So number one, yeah.
Okay. Um, so we just had, I just want to what extent does the does the past election uh, influence whether you're optimistic or pessimistic about what's going to happen in the next year?
Who do you want to go with that?
Frank, Frank.
So, I said I was optimistic about the future, and not to rephrase your question, but you kind of, in so many words, saying, "Hey, if Trump didn't win, how would my answers be different at all?" And maybe you didn't say that, but I still would be concerned about future providing for the family if I wasn't here, regardless of the president. And then your question, in case I got everything backwards, is, "Hey, Trump won. Now, why are you optimistic?" And just a couple of things on that is that I just believe he's more about focusing on the U.S., the nation, and his decisions. Specifically, I guess the number one and number two topics are immigration being one, and our relationship with, I'll say, foreign or international, but I'm really focusing on China, I guess, at this case, with this answer.
And Nick, how about you? To what extent does the election that just transpired have an effect on whether you're optimistic or pessimistic about the next year?
It has a substantial effect on my outlook in the next year. I think there are things that um, will happen that will materially change as opposed to if there were a different administration. At the same time, I also recognize that there are structures and policies in place that would likely exist and be at play apart from whatever administration is in. But the administration that is incoming does play a significant role in my outlook for sure.
Now, I'm just, your dad went added that he articulated two priorities that the current administration or the coming administration has that he feels is a good thing. And one of those was immigration, and the other was China. Where are you at? What are the priorities that you think are the most important?
Um, so how do the priorities I think I'm most important? How do you mean? What are you asking me? What priorities of the incoming administration am I most
I'm
keen on,
asking
or
what you think. Your dad was saying he
right,
was happy because he thinks the two priorities he values are going to be addressed. So,
right?
what are your top two priorities, and do you think they'll be addressed?
I'd say my number one priority is the economy. Um, and I'm not confident that it'll be addressed um, in a way that benefits me or that I would like it to be addressed. And of course, the economy is multifaceted. I guess if I had to get more granular, I'd mainly say housing is something that I don't think would be addressed in a way that I would like. So that's one. And I would say my next priority after that has to do with, not to sound glib, but just justice, the rule of law, things of that nature.
Okay. So, okay. Um, I'm trying to think. I pretty much got what I wanted to get. Um, if you guys have anything you want to throw in here, please go for it.
I got nothing.
Frank?
Yeah, I'm more of a, and judge me as you may or not, but I'm more of a reactive person, whereby I'll go off of what we're talking about and why we're saying certain things and run with it from that point. I recognize differences of then and now. So another thing too is like, if the important part of this, experiment, if you will, is to always connect it politically, I'm okay with that. Like I'm okay, no harm, no foul, or not. Meaning it doesn't always have to be right. It could just be. It is. I couldn't tell you who the presidents were and run them up the line based on when I was his age to now, but there was different good parts and then not so good parts. If I had to round out my thing in a trifecta with regard to immigration, China, just to throw the other thing, the wars, like wars. I'm just, we all in the world, never mind the nation, would be in a better place if there was less of those.
Okay. Let me, you said something that made me think of a question, and I'm going to lose it. Welcome to my world. One of my concerns is I'm going to remember 5 minutes from now what I'm talking about now. Oh, that's a question. Who in your lifetime, Frank, who's the best and worst president in your lifetime?
Oh man. So I want I want to give an answer and a response. I didn't. I don't even consider myself fully following things now compared to some. But if I had to just throw the two and watch this, I could even answer this question with leaving the current or president elect at. Oh no, is that?
No, the current president-elect was a president.
Oh, good one. See that's a detail. So with that little cheat sheet cliff note, I'm gonna put him as the best, and then um the worst. I don't know, possibly. I guess maybe Carter. Jimmy
Okay.
maybe.
And Nick, who's your best and worst in your lifetime?
I don't have a lot to choose from.
Right.
Um, yeah, so and my lifetime is also circumscribed just because I'm not necessarily politically aware at the time that I was born, so I would say the first president that I was even politically aware of really was Barack Obama. So uh, I'd probably have to go him, number one.
Number one. Okay. And
And
worst?
then the worst would probably be Trump.
Okay. So that leads to one other question. You two guys clearly have a different political orientation. How is how I don't want to get into any of it, but how is that for you? How does that affect or not affect your relationship with each other? Or to what extent does current politics play into your daily life in terms of your family?
I guess I could start with that one. I don't think it materially affects us all that much. I mean, we've definitely had conversations about our opposing viewpoints um and they've been fine and civil, and we've shared disagreements, and we've been able to talk through that and then still get along and be fine with that. So, um I would say that our political disagreements don't um take away from our relationship.
Okay. How about you, Frank?
Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. But as long as you're only in this case referencing Nick and I, because it takes a certain type of person mentally, emotionally, and otherwise to ignore, for lack of a better word, just in your face stupidity one way or the other, right? So it doesn't matter if you say Trump's the best or Biden's the worst. In my world, those are almost equally stupid. So as long as you don't get impacted by that, then you can be civil.
Okay. So if I got you right, you're agreeing with Nick that the fact that you both have diametrically opposed opinions about, say, Donald Trump doesn't affect your personal relationship.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Um, and if you could have One wish. One wish come true in the next year. Frank, what would yours be?
Oh man, I don't know, man. I just one wish, one wish for myself, the nation. Don't be selfish. I don't know. I don't know. It's a tough one. I'm not content, but I don't know. I have a lot to be thankful for. So in that, I don't wasn't ready for a question of what do I need and want. Health, right? Health, not wealth, health with an H, right? Because if I have health, either mentally, physically, even spiritually, it helps in terms of moving on.
So your wish would be for good health.
Yeah.
Nick, what's yours?
Can I wish for more wishes?
No.
That's a stupid genie analogy, man. That, yeah, my one wish is a million wishes. The genie comes out, beats the hell out of the person.
No, that was obviously a joke answer. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what my
Okay, here I am. I'm giving you one wish, and it'll
wish
come
would be.
true, but you have to make it within the next 20 seconds.
Oh, within the next 20 seconds.
Just give us a wish.
I guess it would be something along the lines of that we would stop polluting the world. And, but I'd like to phrase it in a way that also that the pollution that's currently been done gets undone as well.
Okay. And there was another question that came up. Oh, I know. You mentioned something in terms of health, Frank. You said physically, mentally, religiously. So let me ask you both. Frank, do you see yourself as a member of a religion? Are you a religious person?
I would say spiritual, not necessarily religious. I'm not going to get locked into any type of church or cult, but I do believe that there's more going on than just what we're looking at here.
Okay. Do you go to church or anything like that?
Well, so again, my answer is I'm spiritual. I'm in church right now, but right now I'm talking to you guys.
You go to any organized churches or established churches, like the church down the block, kind of a thing?
No.
Okay. How about you, Nick? What's your religious orientation?
I'm not a member of any religion. I don't go to any churches. But I guess along the lines of my dad, I would say I'm spiritual. I believe that there is something bigger than me. But no, I don't go to any church.
Okay. And you both believe there's something bigger than you? I want to be clear on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Sure.
So is there something bigger than you? Does that equate out to God?
For me, it would just depend on what I don't know. I don't know what people mean when they say that. Some people mean different things when they use that word. Yeah, there are, so I don't, I guess the best way to say that is I don't know. I think it was if you grant me a few seconds for a quick anecdote, Clarence Darrow is a, famous historical attorney, and there's one time where he's trying a case down south. It was the Scopes monkey trial. And so the story goes that some woman pressed him about whether or not he believes in God. And, of course, he's essentially prosecuting the case against religion in school at the time. And he said, I don't know what you mean when you say God. And she said, I mean love. And he said, well, then I believe in God. So I guess that's where my mind is at when you ask me if the thing that I think that's bigger than me is God. It's like it depends on what you mean by that. I would agree with Clarence Darrow's answer on that.
Okay. How about you, Frank? Do you believe in God?
So I think Nick is so smart, and what a great answer is the good news. The bad news is that you'll never get one of those answers from me ever.
Okay.
So if you and or Nick at any particular time had a challenge in your life, whether it was Nick with a test or whether it was you or something else or another person something else, and you said to me, Frankie, I prayed to a pretzel, and the next day I passed my test or my surgery went well or this happened, and I said, well, you mean you prayed to God? It would have been the same thing. If that worked for you, then I'm happy. The point is you believed in something bigger and different to yourself, and you had, a successful outcome from it.
Okay, I understand your answer, but it's not responsive to my question. Do you personally believe in God?
Yeah,
Okay, that's good. I got the
yeah.
I don't think I got any more. Okay. I think that covers what I wanted to cover. Again, before I cut this off, anything either of you want to throw in here?
I got nothing.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording. Okay. Stay on for a minute if you don't mind.